I gave him the best life I could. Cuddled all the time. He got to play, have fun with the other animals. So I did my best. The vet couldn't really give an explanation. They're not sure. But yeah, I felt like I was just with him forever, you know? Oh, I love that cat so goddamn much.
Hey, what's good, y'all? Today I decided not to make an intro because I only come bearing what I believe to be as sad news. So you all remember Prismo, Vegan Gain's very adorable cat who I made a video on roughly 25 days ago asking, is Vegan Gain's cat okay? Well, in that video, I talked about how he feeds his cat a vegan diet, and I broke down many of the reasons why that's a terrible idea. I even went into the specific food that he was talking about that he was feeding him and why several of the main ingredients were awful for cats and what kind of health problems they can lead to. Well, I cannot say without the shadow of a doubt that this situation was caused by this, but that's what I firmly believe. I just cannot say it definitively because I can't prove it. I can only speculate based off the information that we have. So yesterday on his stream, Vegan Gains announced to everybody that his cat Prismo had sadly been put down and died in his arms. The cause was due to sudden acute kidney failure.
I have really bad news to announce. Prismo died. He had sudden acute kidney failure, and he had to be put to sleep today. So I was just at the vet's a couple hours ago, and he died in my arms, and I've been crying all fucking day, and that was absolutely horrible. So, yeah, that sucks.
Honestly, the way this dude is always just completely soulless and like seems to be completely lacking like the human aspect of being human, I didn't think he had the ability to cry, so I don't even know if I fully believe him. I mean, all of that and on top of the fact that this man filmed his grandpa dying for content and saying that he deserved it because he ate meat is just so beyond me. But of course, he's gonna quote-unquote cry when his cat dies, despite it very likely being due to the fact that you were not feeding your cat a proper diet for their needs. Alright, so now let's actually talk a little bit about the cause. So he says that he took his cat to the vet, had sudden acute kidney failure, which is something that can happen, right? I looked into this quite a bit, and some of the main causes of this are toxins, so things that are genuinely toxic to cats, like certain flowers, like lilacs, like or something, and things of that nature. So if your cat eats that, the potential for sudden acute kidney failure goes up pretty exponentially. But it's typically quite treatable as long as it's caught early enough and can be reversed, because all you have to do essentially is remove the toxins. Remove the toxins and then, apply some additional treatment to make sure your cat is okay. So, considering that this guy doesn't work a job outside of sitting at his computer and streaming, I imagine he has quite the ample time along with Jasmine to watch over his cats and to care for them. So it makes it a little bit unbelievable that his cats somehow find a way to ingest some sort of specific toxin that could have led to the failure. And then if you look into some of the dangers of feeding your cat vegan diets, particularly some of these ingredients that were very prevalent in the food that was being fed to poor Prismo every single day, you will see that kidney failure is a very obvious risk, and other types of organ failures, along with a plethora of other health issues, which I outlined in my previous video talking about whether or not Prismo was okay. And just as a quick refresher, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to look at a couple of those ingredients, and we're going to look at how they affect cats just real quick. I'm not going to go in depth, just so you guys have an idea. All right, so first off, we have the Benevo vegan wet food. So when I first made this video, or the video previously about his cat, I talked about the hard food because I actually wasn't aware that he also fed them a wet food. So then I wanted to look into the ingredients of this, and it turns out this one isn't as bad as the other one, but it comes with its own issues, which I'll explain shortly. So this one, you'll notice it's soy free, wheat and gluten-free, which is great because soy and wheat are awful for cats, which are the main ingredients in the dry food, which he also fed his cat. Now, what I want you guys to pay close attention to is that the main ingredients are potatoes. And then lower on the list is brown rice, both of which not very good for cats. And I will show you why potatoes in particular are very, very, very bad. So there's a lot of different information about potatoes and how they affect cats. So there's a difference between raw potatoes, cooked potatoes, etc. Now, the reason why this is important is because raw potatoes and just anything on a raw potato that has not been cooked or peeled is toxic. And anything toxic can lead to kidney failure in a cat. Now, I don't know for a fact whether or not Benevo cooks their potatoes. I imagine if they actually give a shit about their animals, then yeah. But the thing is, that doesn't mean that there's not going to be some sort of rawness to them or potato skins being used. This is animal food. The standards are so low compared to human food that there's no way on earth you could trust this company to be making sure that there's no potato skins, no raw potatoes, none of that getting into your cat food. Because if that does happen, well, guess what? You have now poisoned your cat, and now your cat is at risk of having things happen to it like organ failure and kidney failure, which is what happened to Vegan Gains' cat. And this is one of the main foods that he was feeding his cat. Not only are potatoes just like potentially toxic, but they're also dense in carbs. That's the main thing that they are, is carbs, and cats are only supposed to use roughly 10% of their diet to have carbs in it. It should be less than that, is what's recommended by veterinarians. They also don't utilize carbs like well at all. They get most of their energy from protein. Carbs effectively do almost nothing for them. And then furthermore, the potatoes are not exactly a high source of protein. So when you look at the ingredients overall for the wet cat food and then even the nutrition facts, and it basically straight up tells you that there's like almost no protein. There's literally almost no protein in the wet food at all, which means that clearly he has to be feeding his cat the dry food with it, and which he was doing, because without that, this cat's getting pretty much no nutritional value from this at all. Well, what is a cat gonna do with potatoes, carrots, oats, vegetable oil, peas, brown rice, blueberries? Nothing. Sorry, I just realized I was covering it, but these ingredients are literally worthless to a cat. Where is the protein? Where's the protein? The only thing here that has protein is the potatoes. And the potatoes, it's what, 3 to 4 grams of protein for an entire potato? How much food does your cat need to eat just to get a couple grams of protein? Like, it just doesn't add up. So that's where the hard food comes in. But then what you'll notice here, which they do have quite a bit of protein, but look at the ingredients. Soy, wheat, rice, all things that are terrible for your cats. And I'm not going to go into detail about all of this stuff because I already did that in that previous video. So we're just going to move on. So again, while I can't say definitively because I don't want to be sued for defamation or some bullshit like that, I'm so confident and in my own little mind that him feeding his cats like this is what led to only 3.5 years old. Prismo only made it to roughly 3.5, somewhere between 3.5 and 4 years old. Cats are supposed to live between 12 and like 20 years as a pet. This cat basically is like as a human, died at 15 years old. You know, like, that is how young this cat was. Can you imagine dying of a sudden acute kidney failure at 15? That's just something that doesn't really happen. Cats tend to develop like chronic kidney disease and stuff like that after they're around 10 years old, even sometimes 5, but the older they get, the risk of that goes up significantly. It's actually one of the main killers of cats. But in this case, it seemed to be just some narcissistic asshole thinking that he's somehow above the laws of nature and can make his cat be vegan and healthy. Like, that's called delusion. how can you claim that you care about your cat when you won't even give them the correct food that they need to live and actually be healthy? You're a fucking liar, dude. I know that for a fact. One of your last comment that you left on one of my videos was, "Oh, I made another dum-dum talking about your cat. I'm not a veterinarian. I don't know what I'm talking about. We take him to the vet all the time. They say he's perfectly healthy." Okay, sure, he's perfectly healthy. So why did he get sudden acute kidney failure? And there's no explanation? Sure.
Yeah, I really fucking miss him, man. He was just this amazing gray blob that I just fucking loved. He'd always meow at me to come to bed and cuddle, and he's gone. So, yeah, I'm sorry too. That was one of the hardest things I've had to deal with, I think, ever. He was only 4 years old, but I gave him the best life I could.
Yeah, no you didn't. You're a liar, dude. You did not give that cat the best life you could. You gave that cat the best life you were willing to give him. Because I guarantee you that cat would have lived a much better life and would continue to still be alive had you just fed him properly. But you chose not to do that because your ego and narcissism just would not let you. It's like you felt this need to prove to the world that somehow everything, every animal, every being could somehow be vegan, when the fact of the matter is it's just not true. That cat was an obligate carnivore. That cat needed meat to be healthy. That cat needed meat so that its organs would not fail and it wouldn't be poisoned by potatoes and wheat and soy. And when I brought this to your attention before and you just called me dumb and I didn't know what I was talking about, and that, oh, other pet foods has those ingredients too, the only difference is they also have meat. Here's the thing. Most people that really, try to provide the best that they can for their animals try to avoid those foods that are high in those like filler proteins and stuff. Like the food that I give my cats, the main ingredients are the meat, and then there's almost no wheat in any of them. If there is wheat or rice, it's like on the lowest level of the ingredients list, which means it is a very, very small factor in it. If the best argument you have is relative privation fallacy, the not as badass fallacy, then you've lost. Because actually, even using that argument is crazy, because you didn't even acknowledge the fact that these were what you were feeding your cats. These terrible ingredients, which you acknowledge were bad, were the primary ingredients. That was the issue. There's a big difference when your diet is including like 70% soy versus like 5% soy. Like, do you understand how there's a huge imbalance of that? Like, you work out, right? You put on muscles and stuff, and one of the main building blocks for muscles are proteins, amino acids and stuff. Well, if you just swap that out for, I don't know, fucking magnesium, carbohydrates, something completely different, well, guess what? Now you're not gaining that muscle. You would understand that, right? This is no different. The main things your cat needs are proteins from animal products, because proteins from soy is awful for them. Guys, I just want to briefly mention this isn't the first time that this has happened, because he also had a wolf dog, which this story is really muddy, and I'm probably going to have to make a completely separate video about this after I've finished doing all the research for it, because it's very, very confusing, because there's so many different things that were said, and this has happened over the course of years. So I'll just give you guys the TLDR. Many, many years ago, Vegan Gains had a wolf dog. We fed the wolf dog a vegan diet. The dog died. And of course, he blames it on external factors, things that had nothing to do with the diet. And then he also claims that his wife, Jasmine, fed the dog meat for a while, and he got so mad at her that he almost divorced her. But there's also stories that he had tons of meat in his freezer for the wolf dog, and then at some point decided to stop feeding it meat because he believed that he could thrive on a vegan diet. And you know what's crazy? That the cause of death was also something digestive system related. It was like an enzyme deficiency or something along those lines, where it basically could not break down the foods that it was consuming and basically starved to death. Well, isn't that awfully suspicious when, a wolf dog is meant to eat meat and you're feeding it fucking plants? I'd imagine, considering that they're not meant to digest those things, that it might be quite difficult for them, that might lead to starvation, but I'm just theorizing.
Cuddled all the time. He got to play, have fun with the other animals, so I did my best. You know what caused it? The vet doesn't really know. He had the infection in his paw, and we had him on antibiotics, and it was going away, but he might have had a compromised immune system, and it damaged his kidneys in some way. But yeah, the vet couldn't really give an explanation. They're not sure. But yeah, I felt like I was just with him forever, you know? Oh, I love that cat so goddamn much.
How much did you love your cat? Clearly not enough to feed them properly so that you can live a long, happy life. I even gave you a potential solution to this whole meat eating thing that you didn't want to contribute to. You talked about in a previous video that you thought it could totally be vegan to kill and eat, boars and wild animals that are really disruptive to the environment, then kill a bunch of other animals. And I was like, okay, well, why don't you go hunt some wild boar, cut some meat up and feed that to your cat so that your cat can thrive. And you know what I mean? Like, in your eyes, you'd be doing the most good for the world in this scenario. Wouldn't that be just a wonderful display of utilitarianism, just doing the absolute most good that you possibly could? You're taking care of a pest that is destroying crops and making it difficult for you to get your corn, while also making sure that your cat Prismo is healthy and happy and gets the food that he needs. I don't know, that was just a suggestion, but I'm sure you're gonna call me a dum-dum soon enough. But again, I can't say anything definitive. These are just my thoughts and opinions and what I believe to be the case. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. And I just want to say this, RIP Prismo. Everybody, like I said, everybody that watches my videos, you might think we're all a bunch of animal abusers or whatever you vegans like to say all the time, but I guarantee you the majority of us probably actually cared more about your cat than you did. That's it for this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Until next time.